As the head of the executive branch, the president serves as the chief executive officer of the federal government. While the president's most visible duties are conducting foreign policy and serving as commander-in-chief of the military, the president also wields significant domestic powers. Two key examples are the ability to issue executive orders and grant clemency through pardons, reprieves, and amnesty actions. Executive orders. An executive order is a directive issued by the president that has the force of law. It allows the president to manage federal operations and implement laws and policies without the need for congressional action. The ability to issue executive orders stems from the president's constitutional duty to take care that the laws be faithfully executed. Executive orders are a powerful tool that enable presidents to act unilaterally on important issues facing the nation. Some of the most consequential executive orders in history include the Emancipation Proclamation, 1863, issued by Abraham Lincoln. It freed all enslaved people in Confederate-held territories during the Civil War. Establishing the Fair Labor Standards Act, 1938. Franklin D. Roosevelt's order set minimum wages and maximum weekly hours for federal workers, ushering in worker protections that later applied to the private sector. Desegregating the military, 1948. Harry S. Truman abolished racial discrimination in the armed forces through executive order, 9981, helping advance the civil rights movement. Affirmatively, furthering fair housing, 2015. Barack Obama's order promoted housing integration by requiring federal programs related to housing to actively work to end discrimination and promote equal opportunity. While executive orders carry the force of law, there are limitations. Congress can overturn an executive order by passing legislation that contradicts it. For example, Congress later codified many of the labor protections originally established in FDR's order. Additionally, the Supreme Court has the power of judicial review to rule against executive orders it deems unconstitutional. In the 1950s, the court struck down Truman's attempt to seize and operate steel mills through an executive order during the Korean War. Public opinion and political capital are also important checks on a president's use of executive orders. Highly controversial or unpopular orders can damage a president's credibility and standing with the American people. Executive orders seen as executive overreach invite harsh criticism and potential legal challenges. Clemency powers. The president also has broad clemency powers granted under Article 2 of the Constitution. This includes the ability to pardon individuals convicted of federal offenses, issue reprieves to delay carrying out sentences, and grant amnesty in certain circumstances. A pardon is an official act of forgiveness that restores an individual's civil liberties. It removes remaining penalties and disciplinary consequences associated with a federal conviction. The pardon process involves the Office of the Pardon Attorney reviewing applications and providing non-binding recommendations to the president. Some famous pardons include President Gerald Ford's pardon of Richard Nixon for any offenses committed during the Watergate scandal and cover-up. Barack Obama's 2017 pardon of boxer Jack Johnson, who was convicted of racially motivated charges under the Mann Act in 1913. President Trump's pardon of former aides indicted as part of the Russia investigation, including Roger Stone and Paul Manafort. In contrast to a full pardon, a reprieve is a temporary postponement or reduction of a sentence. It does not absolve the conviction itself. One of the most notable presidential reprieves was when President Lincoln delayed the execution dates of the Dakota 38 tribe members convicted in Minnesota's Indian War of 1862. This bought time to individually review each case, ultimately resulting in 39 executions rather than all 303. While pardons are granted after conviction, Amnesty covers acts that have not yet been prosecuted. Amnesty offers forgiveness for offenses committed against the U.S. government, such as draft evasion during times of war. For example, President Jimmy Carter controversially granted amnesty to Vietnam draft dodgers in 1977, restoring their civil rights. Amnesty has also been used in immigration contexts, like when Ronald Reagan provided amnesty to certain undocumented immigrants who had continuously resided in the U.S. before 1982 through the Immigration Reform and Control Act. Like executive orders, a president's clemency decisions can be scrutinized and checked by the other branches of government and public pressure. Congress has the ability to limit certain clemency actions, such as prohibiting amnesty for draft dodgers during active wars. The Supreme Court can also rule whether specific pardons or amnesties are constitutional. While the president's clemency powers are broad, actually granting pardons or amnesty can be highly controversial and politically risky. Public backlash can result if such actions are seen as unjustified favoritism, abuse of power, or circumventing the justice system. The potential unpopularity of controversial pardons and amnesties acts as a restraint. For example, Ford's pardon of Nixon was credited with costing him the 1976 election. The independence of the Justice Department in prosecuting federal cases further checks the president's clemency authority. In conclusion, the president's powers to issue executive orders and grant clemency are among the most consequential tools available to enact policies and influence the legal system. However, these unilateral authorities exist within the system of checks and balances designed by the founders to prevent any single branch from accumulating too much power. Controversial uses of executive orders and pardons often face pushback from the courts, Congress, and court of public opinion. Ultimately, the president's judicious use of these powers rests largely on their leadership abilities, political skills, and mindfulness of constitutional constraints.